Hey there, John Morris here, johnmorrisonline.com. Welcome back to another episode of the John Morris Show, broadcasting to you from the boonies down here in the Ozarks in Missouri. But today I wanted to talk about the daily message that I put out today, and I want to start doing this a little bit more in the podcast, kind of elaborating on what I wrote for the day, simply because that's kind of what this platform is for, and I wanted to get into it a little bit more for those of you that listen to the podcast or watch the show on YouTube. And, also I often get some pushback or questions or whatever, so I wanted to dive into some of that stuff as I do this. So anyway, today's message the title for it was Web Development Isn't That Important. I think the main idea that I was trying to convey in this is this idea that ultimately coding and web development, web design, whatever sort of nuanced path you take, it's really it's a means to an end. And I think for me, the way that I came to web development, I've always sort of kept that in perspective because I didn't grow up in a household that was heavy into tech. My older brother had got into some early computer programming, but I would play the games he made, but I never really got into the actual coding part of it. I think I watched him for about 5 minutes once, and I was like, F that. I'm not going to do that ever in my life, which is kind of ironic. But my dad was in the military. He was a plumber. Our family did a lot of construction and then military and sports. That was sort of kind of the context of our family and sort of what I grew up. Did construction and sales early on. I was in the military, and I didn't get into web design or learning how to code until I was 22, 23 years old. So I didn't grow up with it just being something that was kind of a way of life for my family. And so when I got into it, I sort of stumbled into it as something that I enjoyed. I was actually getting into building websites for other stuff to sell stuff and to sell information and be more of an online marketer, and got into it that way and just found out that as I was building all these websites that I actually really enjoyed it. And so I think I've always sort of seen it as more of a means to an end, as not something that was a way of life and not just falling in love with the code itself. And it's something that I see a lot of developers, especially new developers, sort of fall into is they start, you're learning how to create this thing that you've probably used for a long time and never really understood how it worked. But now you're getting into it and you're starting to see how this thing was done and how that thing was done. And all these cool things that you saw that you're like, oh, that seems like magic. Now you're starting to see how they're done. You realize, oh, it's not really that magic. It's actually pretty simple. You see yourself creating them and doing them, and it can be very addictive, and it's easy to become very enamored with that sort of thing. And so again, it's something I wanted to address. Now, the way that I put it in my message today was I said, when you lay your head down at night and think about all the things you want for your life right before you doze off, yeah, you dream about PHP 8, I'm sure. You see yourself chained to a desk typing code. That's what you really want out of life. Or Thanksgiving, when you're sitting around the table with your family, big spread of food you're about to rip into, and you're telling everyone what you're thankful for. I'm sure it's, well, I'm thankful for CSS transitions and React and so forth, right? Like, obviously, that's not what happens in those situations. You're not dreaming about being chained to your desk and code, or those aren't the things that you think of when you think about what you're thankful for. Think about what you're thankful for most, because you're a normal human being. And so again, it's the point is to keep the things that matter most in mind and to remember why you're doing this and not get so caught up in your love of coding or love of learning new things that you sort of become a permanent student. I see this happen a lot with new developers, and it sort of becomes an excuse not to apply for that first job, not to try and get that first client. And, I just need to learn one more thing. I just need to do this one more thing. If I learn just this one more thing, and it's sort of this dual emotional trap of, on one side, you're sort of scared to put yourself out there to apply for a job or get a client or whatever, right? That can be scary, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's scary for everybody. But then on the other side is learning is fun, and it can be addictive and so forth. And it's like these two emotions work to sort of just trap you in this kind of permanent learning state. And what I want to do, and I try to do this every so often, is just sort of snap you out of that and get you to remember the things that matter most to you, because ultimately sitting around and learning code and never actually producing anything with it, that's not going to get you any closer to the goals that you have, the things that you really want, the things that really matter in your life. So again, try to get focused really with web development and coding. You should learn it. You should learn it as quick as you can, and as soon as possible, you should start using it to build the life that you really want. Go from a consumer of the internet to a producer of the internet as soon as possible. That mindset shift, that paradigm shift, even if when you make it, you're really not producing all that much, or you're not that great of a producer, simply making that mindset shift can be very impactful in your career, in your life, in the way you think about the internet and what you're doing. So the quicker you can become a producer of the internet, not just a consumer, then the sooner it is that you're actually going to start doing the things necessary to get you the things that you want in life. So I just don't want you to forget that. I don't want you to get caught in that permanent trap. Now, of course, this is also why I've built my coding curriculum the way that I did and designed it the way that it is, because it's there to help you learn how to code fast. Now, sort of ironically or counterintuitively, it's actually it's designed to help you to learn fast by slowing things down, by sort of focusing on fundamentals and teaching those things that you're going to use in 90% of what you do. Because when you get those things locked down and get really good at them to where you can do them sort of repetitively without having to think about them, you get a lot better and things move a lot faster, and you can then build new skills and new insights and new learning on top of that much more quickly. And so I've designed my courses specifically in that way, where we spend a lot of time on the fundamentals at first, but over the long run of the total skill set, you actually end up learning faster as a result. So again, that's why I've designed my curriculum that way. And of course, it's got HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP, MySQL, even freelancing in there if you want to learn how to do that. So again, I think it's one of the better ways to learn and learn fast and get to that point where you can be a producer. You can start making a living doing this as a web developer. Anyway, if you want to learn more about that in curriculum, you can go to johnmorrisonline.com/Skillshare and learn how to get no-cost access to that entire curriculum. Again, it's johnmorrisonline.com/Skillshare. All right, that'll do it for today's episode. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time.